Okay, so I think now we are going to enter panel discussion number 1, right? It's about navigating the enterprise complexity with architecture for successful digital transformation journey. Okay, I think we are very fortunate this morning. We have 3 esteemed panelists. So let me just introduce. The first one is Dr. Kwong Yuk Wah. So Dr. Kwong is the advisor digitalization of NTUC Club, right? I think NTUC is not a foreign name. Everyone knows what is NTUC. So she's also an adjunct professor with the School of Computing and Executive Education Fellow of Advanced Computing Education in National University of Singapore. I think she has a lot of the wealth of experience in the enterprise architecture. And I heard from her, I think in some times ago, or maybe now, she's basically using a lot of EA concept in delivering the lecture, as well as in applying in her role. Later, we can hear more from her. So prior to her current roles, she was the CIO of NTUC Club and NTUC First Campus, as well as the Chief Data Protection Officer of NTUC and its affiliated unions. So prior to NTUC, I think she has also held a quite number of management position with IDA, with this IMDA today. Okay. Then for second presenter, we have Mr. Paul Price. So Paul is, I mean, hopefully he's awake. He's 2 a.m. now. I think about 2:30 a.m. his local time. Yeah, I just woke him up just now by alarm clock half an hour ago. So Paul is the CEO and the founder of ISA, and one of the largest enterprise and IT architect association in the world. So through his time at ISA, Paul has taken the association from a single user group in Austin, Texas, in early 2000 to an international organization with chapters in over 25 countries. So you can hear directly from him about this, how he managed to grow one small group to the global association. And Paul vision is a unified architecture profession with effective education, credential, and ethics, which fully support a corporate strategy and delivery of technology investment. So I think Paul also has spoken at hundreds or maybe thousands of events, as well as held conferences and training for architects all over the world. Okay, so we will hear directly from him shortly. And last but not least, we have also very fortunate to have Mr. Tan Bitek. Yeah, so BISTEC, I think, is the cluster of the education director with GovTech, and also the second portfolio as the CIO with the Ministry of Education. Okay, I think, yeah, we can hear more directly from him later. So in this capacity, BITEC oversees and coordinates the digitalization and driving digital government efforts across the entire lifelong learning continuum across entire educational sectors. He also drives the consolidation and standardization of application as well as modernization of agency application system. Okay, and this is, I think, very, very critical. We hear directly from him about his belief and also his architecture adoption there. Okay, so with that, I think everyone already, our 3 esteemed panelists online, you can see them face to face. Let me just do the ice breaking for everyone because I've been speaking too much. So I will let each one of you to introduce yourself 2 to 3 minutes. Yeah, I think we get the ladies first. Dr. Kwong, you have privilege to start, please. I think you need to unmute, Dr. Kwong. You have to unmute, sorry, you have to unmute your mic on the left mute.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Happy to be the first one to speak. Good morning, everybody. Happy to meet you virtually. Like what we did say, I have spent, no, like what Aaron say, I have spent a long time with NTUC, actually 12 years, right? Yeah. I decided to take a break from the corporate job in June this year. So right now I am a freelancer, busy teaching and also helping NTUC Club, which is the entertainment and the leisure arm of NTUC, to go through their digitization journey. Yeah. On top of that, I've been teaching part-time at NUS, and for the past 2 years, the subject that I have been teaching is enterprise architecture. Okay, so happy to share more later.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Kong. So the next one is, would like Paul to introduce briefly.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Good morning. Yeah, so very, very morning for me, but good morning to all of you and all of the attendees, and to this excellent event. I always enjoy getting to participate. Normally I get to participate in person, but this is just as good in some ways. It is quite early here, so but I have had my coffee, so we should be fine. So I'm Paul Price. I'm the CEO and founder of ISA. We are the world's largest architect association, and we are lucky to get to work with organizations like the SES, the ICS. We work with computer societies all over the world, as well as get to work with ATD and many of the organizations throughout Singapore, Malaysia, and Southeast Asia on developing the enterprise architecture profession. So what we're very interested in at ISA, what my sole role is to be able to build out a body of knowledge that allows us to share working practice across organizations, across enterprises, and across individuals. So we're working through what we call the IDABOK, which is the body of knowledge on architecture. And so I spend most of my days in either speaking like this or working in working groups with some esteemed thought leaders like we have today at today's conference to figure out how you can repeat a good architecture practice, either as an individual practitioner or more specifically in large teams, and how you can have that duplicated. So that's me.
Right. Thank you so much, Paul. Yes. Last but not least, Bitek, perhaps want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Aaron. Hi, good morning to everyone. My name is Bitek. I'm currently the Chief Information Officer with the Ministry of Education. Actually, I'm also a staff of GovTech Singapore. So for GovTech, we do actually have forward deploy our teams to ministries like Ministry of Education to help them in their digitalization efforts and journey. So I started off my journey with DSTA as an engineer. I guess we all started that as an application developer. So I do that as well. And then through my career, I had the opportunity to, as I progressed into the career, had the opportunity to also lead in enterprise architecture efforts as well. In fact, I was a member of the committee of practice that was established by the then Infocom Development Authority of Singapore, IDA, and have been contributing into the EA efforts for the government or digital e-government then as well. I joined IDA in 2011, and then I was actually deployed to Ministry of Manpower to drive the digitalization efforts there. And I joined MOE in 2016, so it's been 5 years since. And currently I'm actually leading the team at MOE to drive the digitalization efforts for our schools and our students and our teachers as well. So happy to be invited to this panel, and I'm happy to share some of my experiences with the panel and the participants as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Bitek. And for those of you who are attending and you have any question, I have a prepared couple of questions for each of the panelists. So in the meantime, you can also type in, if you see Zoom in the middle there, they got Q&A. You can click that box and you can type in. So I will monitor any question, then I will either interject or I leave it until in between the panelists Q&A. Okay, so please feel free to be more interactive because I think it's more fun than just one-way listening. All right, so I think I got the first question for Dr. Kwong. Yeah, so I think we have been faced by COVID-19 outbreak, and this has forced many organizations to execute digital transformation this year. Basically, in four-letter word is ASAP. We can't wait anymore. Okay, of course, as otherwise many businesses cannot sustain and operate the way they used to do. So perhaps Dr. Kwong, could you share with us on your update in regards to your digital transformation journey, and what are the challenges faced and how do you overcome them?
Okay, happy to share with everybody. As I mentioned just now, since June this year is also the COVID period, I decided to take a break from the full-time job. So I have been helping the NTUC Club, which is the entertainment arm and the leisure arm of NTUC. So they run theme parks, they run resort, and the operation is really affected. Nobody go there, right? But the management has decided to embark on the digitization journey, right? And I have been helping them to do the digitization workshop and all this. And largely, I use the enterprise architecture concept, in particularly the business architecture concept to guide the discussion. But perhaps my sharing is more meaningful on the non-NTUC side. I also spend quite a lot of time the last few months teaching, and I interacted with the SME business leaders and also the IT professional that they are attending training and try to make a switch in their career or learn some digitization skill. So perhaps I can share with everybody the ground sentiment, right? So for the business leader, they have decided a long time ago that digitization is the way to go, right? And COVID-19 is only opportunity to accelerate their digitization adoption. But of course, for the business leader, especially the SME, one of the challenge is, which part of the business to start first, right? And then after, this part of the business started, what are the roadmap, so they have been struggling on that, yeah. Just now, we did also talk about AI, and all these business leaders have been hearing talks about AI, blockchain, and all this. So they also asked me, should they use AI and blockchain, and how all this can help their business, yeah. Now, then the other group of the business leader, they are early adopter. They have started the digitization. They have even deployed the solution and implemented the solutions. And one of the sentiment I heard from them is all the solutions they deployed cannot talk to each other. Now, then the other ground sentiment is, okay, data analytics very important. So they spend a lot of effort, go and collect the data, right? They have a mobile app or whatever, collect the data, but they cannot analyze the data because the data cannot talk to each other, right? Now, so it all come to the basic question of there must be a systematic framework to guide them, right? Yeah, they don't deploy the technology for the sake of deploying the technology. There must be a right technology to support their business goal, their business mission, their business outcome, right? And sadly, some of the business leaders told me that they feel very sad because they have made investment, but they cannot see the ROI, the return of investment. So what I have done for the past few months, I have designed a framework using the enterprise architecture concept. So I don't use target and all this, right? So basically I use design thinking, I use business canvas model, I use customer journey, and also use the business capability model to come up with a blueprint for them to guide them for the digital solution adoption. Yeah.
Right. I think, thank you so much, Dr. Kwong. I think what you have said is what we are facing every day. We can't avoid. I mean, this is the truth. On the other side of the, we hear many success stories, but the success, I think, is only 10, 20, or 30% of what out there. Okay. So I think we can find out more about, I think, from the rest of our continuous Q&A as well as the presentation. So I think I have now a question for BTech. I think we all know that our future lies in the hand of younger generation, and I think therefore MOE is one of the key pillars for the nation to prepare for the next generation, right? So I think we all know also education has been disrupted badly due to COVID-19. I think I remember sometime in March, the school still ongoing, suddenly everybody have to work from home. Okay, so every parent panic. I went to the computer shop, all the computer retail, the parents bring their kids, grab any computer that are available because most of them out of stock, right? Because otherwise, and then also the printer, because suddenly now every student need to print at home and etc. So it's chaotic at the March, April timeframe, okay? And I think, of course, now perhaps we want to know from BTech, right? Of course, you are heading at the top command in terms of the driving or the usage on the online technology, etc. Could you share with us how your team managed this situation? Because I think I don't read that a lot in the newspaper. And how did you overcome these challenges with a very short time frame? Because you don't have 1 year, you only have maybe few days or week. Okay, please, BTech.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, indeed. the pandemic has actually caused quite a lot of disruption to learning for students around the world. In fact, for some countries like the US, schools remain closed and learning students is not able to go back to school or even continue their learning. Actually, I'm glad that we were able to keep our schools and learning for our students intact throughout the pandemic, right? Even though during March and April timeframe, we had to go into circuit breaker where most parents or working adults will have to work from home by default. Um, but students have to remain at home. But actually, schools remain open, but right, virtually, lessons continue. Um, Students continue to attend morning assemblies through Zoom with their teachers, right? They participate in activities, online lessons. They even actually conducted physical education, right? Physical education, PE lessons over Zoom, right? And for some teachers, they even got their parents involved in the activities as well. So there, we saw a lot of creativity in the way lessons were delivered online by our teachers. So we really kudos to our teachers who tried very hard to be creative and also overcome some of the challenges they faced during the circuit breaker period. Right? I think all this did not happen by chance actually. It was actually the result of many years of systematic thinking and investments that MOE has made in the development of digital solutions and infrastructure. And actually, we did this over a series of master plan for ICT in education. In fact, we had four ICT master plan in education. So we are now into the fifth generation of the master plan as well. So, right. So from the introduction of computing and productivity tools in line with the National Computerization Program back then in the early 90s, right, and to current, where we actually implemented in 2018 the National Digital Learning Platform for our schools and teachers. Actually, also known as the Singapore Student Learning Space, or actually for the kids, they use the acronym SLS in short, right? So this was a platform that we equip our schools and teachers, students and teachers, with the digital capabilities and competency of our education fraternity. So it's not just the technology solution, but we also make sure that our education fraternity is ready to and competent enough to be able to leverage technology to augment and complement the teaching and learning. And because of that investment over the series of master plan ICT education, actually when we had to go into full home-based learning during the circuit breaker, we were actually quite ready, right? I'm glad we were quite ready. In fact, because it's not just ready in the sense of technology readiness, but because we have invested quite a fair bit in the human capital development of our education fraternity, they have been quite comfortable and familiar in the use of technology over the many of years, right? So when we had to switch over a technology channel, they were quite actually ready to take it out and quite proficient with it as well. So I mean, underlying it is really what we know, right? As part of the enterprise architecture discipline, it's not just the technology, but also the capability development that has to complement the entire technical EA efforts as well. But having said that, right, it's not all rosy a journey all the time. So there were also unknowns, right? Because previously our digital platform was primarily a platform that augments teaching and learning, right? Because physical face-to-face learning was still the most effective, right? But because we had to go into full home-based learning, then we have to totally rely on the single source digital channel. So our main concern, immediate concern, was whether SLS was able to support such a large scale digital learning across the island, the nation. But fortunately, because we had also deliberately implemented SLS on the cloud, AWS. So we were able to quickly scale, right? Just in a span of days, or in fact 1 or 2 days, because once the announcements was made, we had to quickly move into action and make sure that the system was ready so that students could actually embark on their digital learning 2 days later in March. So fortunately, because we had the system implemented on the cloud, we were able to scale it quickly. And in fact, the delivery of digital learning was delivered quite smoothly across the nation during that period. Another example was, I know when, as part of live classroom, right? So the teachers had to start to switching to Zoom as a platform. And unfortunately, during that period, the cyber hackers and attackers took the advantage, right? And actually started mounting multiple Zoom raiding or bombing attacks on our schools as well. So our schools also were not spared as well. But we were able to quickly work with the industry to establish some level of central control for the online classroom lessons, and that was very helpful because because of the effort, the collaboration with the industry, we're able to ensure continued and secure use of such video conferencing tool for online classroom lessons as well. So I think overall, I think we did well, right? But we are not resting on our laurels. We have actually also start looking at establishing plans for our next bound, what we call to lock in the gains of the COVID-19 because of accelerated digitalization that happened. So we're capitalizing on that, and then start looking at the next mile for what's next in terms of digital learning experience for our students and teachers across the board as well.
Right, thank you so much. I think Bitek for the insightful experience and sharing. Okay, so now we have the next question for Mr. Paul Price. Hopefully you are still awake, Paul. Okay, could you share with us on the industry trend and what you have encountered in regards to the digital transformation? Because they got a quite number of you guys just search through Google that I think it's 70-80% of the digital transformation is not going anywhere. Okay. So what do you think are key success factors or a critical role of architects to ensure that digital transformation is successful?
And we've actually determined that to a certain extent, and that we've done a number of surveys recently of large organizations, as well as worked with a number of our corporate members, et cetera, to actually understand this problem. Digital transformation runs solely top down or as a management priority tends to bump into significant difficulties related to its implementation. So we talk about digital transformation, but digital transformation is actually a people transformation. And it has to happen very close to what we call the edges of the enterprise. What that means is we're actually changing the sort of thinking of the way organizations function, as opposed to just implementing new technologies, much like we have for the last 50 or 60 years. So the organizations that are led in an architect-led digital transformation have 2 to 3 primary working parts. One is a functional EA practice that is able to coordinate at the executive senior manager level the kind of operating objectives, meaning the being able to develop and redevelop their goals effectively. 2 is a functioning business architecture practice that's distributed properly to do what we call demand shaping, meaning they're actually leading discussions with business partners as opposed to waiting for the sort of traditional IT, gets a set of business cases or things like that, or a list of demands or desires from business. So it actually has to happen at a lower level. The real transformation. The third aspect of that is the kind of third leg to that wheel, or to that stool, if you will, is a functional solution architecture practice that's able to work with distributed teams and decentralized decision-making to the extent necessary to be able to implement according to value streams, business capabilities, customer journeys, and other sort of business architect related activities. So there has to be a sort of tight coupling between these three roles. What that does is it distributes the digital transformation decision-making process into the actual, I guess we call it the actual DNA of the organization, meaning we're pushing the transformation not just top down, but really top down to middle out. And that the difference between that means that you're actually working with senior managers and even with line employees or even customers and partners on building an ecosystem related to that. So we've seen this in the airline industries, we've seen this in hospitals, we've seen this in many of the other organizations where architects really become a kind of change agent to look at innovative new approaches that honestly would not have come in the more traditional business planning activities. And it's really about getting ahead of demand, being able to identify opportunities as a part of the planning cycle, but generally prior to the kind of initial IT or the traditional IT involvement where you wait around for business to figure out what it needs to do or wants to do, and really becomes a kind of mentoring organization for business, technical, and management staff. So the ability for the architects to be not only leaders in this, but really fundamentally focused on innovation and change, and moving away from sort of traditional governance roles and being solely IT practitioners, but really working as a group to change an organization's priorities, its financing methods for IT programs, be able to work at a smaller level so that it doesn't require executive approval for every aspect of the transformation. And push those decisions to the edges has been one of the more successful steps for organizations that claim, and we actually like to talk about digital advantage over digital transformation, because I mean, organizations are always transforming. The goal, though, is to achieve some advantage from that transformation, and the organizations we see doing that have a very strong enterprise business and solution architect practice in play there. So it does seem to be the sort of secret sauce, if you will, to effective digital advantage.
Right. I guess thank you so much. We learn. I think maybe perhaps the new trend, digital advantage, will be kicking in the 2021. No more digital transformation. Just kidding.
I hope so. I hope so.
All right. So okay. Before I take the next round of the question to the esteemed panelists, so we have a couple of questions from the audience. Okay. I think let me just to be fair. I think they have a question for BTech. Okay, Mr. Tan, would you love to share the MOE of Singapore EA journey? Yes. BTech, would you like to respond to it?
Sure. Happy to do that. Actually, MOE has been an early adopter of the discipline and practice of enterprise architecture approach. We actually established the governance structure and processes that systematically subject and guide all design and development, all our design and development of all our technology capabilities and initiatives to ensure alignment of the technology platform to the desired strategic outcomes. In fact, in MOE, as part of the business architecture, we have charted out a MOE agenda, right? I can't share the details of the MOE agenda, right? But broadly is really along the line of learn for life, right? I think earlier on, Aaron introduced me as being responsible to look at the digitalization of the entire learning continuum, lifelong learning continuum, right? So we take care of the general education of our kids, right? From, in fact, not just primary one now, we're also looking at MOE kindergartens as well, right? So from preschool to primary school education, and then going to secondary school, and then post-secondary school education into workforce training as well, right? So for those out there who are not quite familiar with how Ministry of Education is set up, Skills Future Singapore is actually in fact a statutory board under Ministry of Education. So you can see that the way we are structured from an enterprise business architecture perspective is really from the entire, it's aligned to the whole mission of Learn for Life, right? So in order for us to really have very strong strategic hold and decision-making rights to drive Learn for Life, MOE now takes care of the entire continuum for Learn for Life, right? From preschool all the way up to workforce training. Okay, so that's from the business architecture perspective, and from a technology perspective, we use that as a reference to guide our technology implementation alignment. So that's how we have actually been practicing enterprise architecture discipline as well. But having said that, right, there's increasing clock speed in terms of the technology development and advancement, and it also increasingly in this whole VUCA nature of our operating context, we do acknowledge that our approach to EA also needs to be adjusted and adapted accordingly. So just for example, for a start, right, I think Dr. Kwong earlier on talked about using the techniques like user journey mapping, business canvas, and all that. That's exactly also what we have done in MOE as well. So for example, we have started taking a more outside-in approach to understanding and identifying needs as well. Because EA can't continue to be just primarily used as a tool for top-down direction and decisions, right? A lot of things are evolving on the ground. So taking an outside-in approach is actually very essential for us, because that's where we start to identifying evolving needs, right? To surface them and bubble them up so that we can use that as a discovery process, exploratory process to guide us in the development of our digital initiatives as well. In fact, Paul earlier talked about top-down, bottom, middle, out. I would say that I'll add on to that say it has also to have a bottom-up as well, right? So that's where we actually pay a lot of attention in terms of user-centric user research efforts, user journey mapping, use testing, validating assumptions on the ground, or whether some of the ideas and concepts we have really actually meet the needs on the ground, and then use that to guide our development of our digital efforts as well. So in order to be able to align our development efforts with the evolving changes of needs, we've also started adapting agile development approach as well, right? And that will allow us to be iteratively test, implement, test, validate, get feedback, and then improve. So this is how we have actually systematically sort of changed our working processes to still take a very enterprise architecture discipline, but take a very responsive and agile and iterative approach to it. So for example, for SLS, right, we started off as SLS actually adopted the agile development approach, and we actually reach out to talking to students, teachers. We never talked to our Director General of Education of how he wants to see student learning space as a digital learning platform for our schools, right? Obviously, we did hear from him, but we didn't hear from him alone. So we reach out to schools, we reach out to students, we reach out to teachers, we even reach out to parents to hear from them, what do they like to have, to see and have within the National Digital Learning Platform. And then we use those inputs to guide our decision process and prioritization of what we want to build into the student learning space. In fact, because of that process, today, the student learning process, SLS, is actually a very interesting platform, because it not only it's a platform that allows students to have a full access, right? Full access, not just because I'm primary one student, I can only have access to primary one curriculum content, but actually because I'm primary one, although I'm primary one, I can also, if I'm interested in a topic that's higher order thinking and higher level, I can even access to a P6 content. If I'm even more able, I can access to a secondary school content as well, or even JC content. So this is a very deliberate attempt that we actually provided, and SLS now offers that capability, and it sort of encourages our students to be a lot more self-directed, take more student agency in their learning as well. And that's again linked back to the whole MOE agenda of Learn for Life, right? The joy of learning and all that. So you can start seeing why certain things, decision, designs, considerations that were implemented in our technology implementations are aligned back to the larger business enterprise business architecture and intent as well. Okay. So because of that, right, we are able to now take advantage of this whole thing. And when we first started SLS, we started off thinking it as a learning app, But because of COVID-19 and the mass adoption of schools onto the platform, we suddenly now actually see that SLS is not just an app anymore. It's now become a very strategic platform, digital platform for MOE. All right. And because of the huge adoption and active usage of the platform over the circuit breaker and pandemic period, we now have huge amount of data that we can mine about students learning, how they're engaging with our digital contents and all that. And because of that, right, and because we have a proper structure of how we define data standards, data definition, and manage the data and collect the data, we now have a rich repository of data that now enable us to bring us to the next level of digital transformation, which is really into AI-enabled adaptive learning, or what we call personalized learning. And that's very powerful again, because we want an education system where it's not one size fits all type, but we want to be able to quickly personalize learning for different students with different strengths, different weaknesses, and in some cases also trigger new passion among our students as well. So the data element, the data architecture is a very key thing for us now to be able to drive more AI-enabled adaptive learning moving forward as well, right? So that's really our very simple journey, but I think simple, but I think it's a lot more deliberate efforts and discipline that's really undergirded by this whole mindset and discipline around enterprise architecture thinking.
Right, thank you so much, Bitek. I think it's very insightful because I think we have read that actually our key boss is not our immediate reporting officer, but actually is our customer. Okay, so in the context of MOE is the student, right? Student is the majority. So at the end, whatever we do, if the student said this system is not good for me, then we are failed. Okay, so I think it's a very right approach the team has done. Taken parents and the student and the teachers on the ground as the immediate input to whatever we want to do in terms of driving transformation. Okay, so we have a couple of few questions. I think let me just get the last one first, which is for Paul. Okay, what is the success rate of digital transformation in SME? SME means small, medium enterprise company. Okay, is it followed by the EF framework? And also, I think I get the second one for Paul. There are too many architecture types: enterprise architecture, solution, application, etc. Right? I think we all know a lot of this specialization. So do you see that IT community will say that is enough? Let's consolidate and standardize the architecture title properly. So we don't want to end to be like power plugs. Like, buy one power plug, you can bring it to multiple countries, right?
Well,
For each other, and perhaps they would like to know your thoughts from ISA perspective.
so of course this is one of my most passionate topics because in no other area of complex engineering, meaning spacecraft and airlines and ships and tall buildings and things of that nature, do we allow corporations to only have to follow standards, right? So we actually enforce to a kind of a matrix model of ensuring quality, and one of those is of course standards and best practice and measurements and building codes and things of that nature. But the other one is what I call people standards, right? So you can't just call yourself a doctor if you want to, meaning a medical doctor, right? You can't really put up a sign outside of your house that says, I can, be happy to do your surgery for you for much cheaper than the hospital would, right? And the reason is because we in other fields, professionalization has been essential in ensuring quality outcomes. Now, we still today have this mentality that sort of anyone can become an IT person, right? Meaning, all I have to do is teach myself JavaScript and Node and React, and I'm a programmer. Which to a certain extent will always remain for enablement systems, but we're now dealing with systems that impact human lives. I think we've heard a wonderful commentary on education, and I think that's an unbelievably important topic. But we also have systems that impact health in the medical fields, oil and gas, self-driving cars, things that actually have impacts on regular day in and day out lives. Our digital lives are now being controlled by a group of uncontrolled individuals, who are effectively protected by corporate identity clauses in consultative environments. And so you effectively have this sort of no one's responsible. So you think about your 401k, is actually being managed by AI algorithms written by the cheapest programmers possible. Now, that's not going to stand, right? And that's ultimately the societies are not going to allow that to continue. So at least tier 1 systems need to be built by a controlled professional group of people, certified engineers. And I don't mean certified like I took the AWS solution architect certification. I mean certified in the sense of board level certifications, true experience. We've all known those people that have gone from job to job to job because they can't hold a job, not because they're trying to move up, but because literally they fail each time. And that would never be allowed in any other field. That pressure from regulation, from digital sovereignty, from countries like Germany or Singapore or whatnot, where we're really hoping to achieve a true sort of digital nation, means that we need to be able to standardize on a high quality group of people. Now that's the kind of work, that's the kind of what we call it, the stick, not the carrot. Now the carrot is there's no reason for your organizations and for CIOs to have to spend so much effort interviewing and figuring out whether or not somebody is a real architect or not. I had one gentleman who only hires board certified architects because, I mean, from his perspective, it means he, instead of doing 8 interviews, he can do 2 interviews because he already knows the level that he's getting from that certified group. So yes, I do think that we're going to see a standardization of role. It's going to be a long time though, because it's a big world, right? So, there'll be, this is one of the few professions where you're just as likely to deal with somebody from Hong Kong as you are from Indonesia, from mainland China, all the way to the United States or South America. And that's a lot of architects to change. So I do hope to see those standardizations occur through what we consider to be a certification activity. And then, yeah, I'm not sure what was the other question related to SMEs. Oh, we don't have a lot. We just ran a major survey. The nice thing about SMEs is SMEs are almost digitally native right now from the beginning, right? There's not a lot of small, medium-sized businesses building big server farms and doing traditional enablement. However, we don't see the access to architecture talent. Many of the consulting organizations have small SME focus. They're much more interested in the $100 billion company than they are the $10 million company. So I do think that we have a responsibility in the computer societies and in the associations to actually put some programs in place to get architecture level thinking available to SMEs in a much broader capacity. And I think it's a very big opportunity for those of you considering sort of freelance architecture work, is being able to actually target working with multiple smaller companies. I mean, when you think about ISO, we don't have a full-time accountant. We have a full-time accounting person, but they work with a part-time accounting organization that focuses on us as an SME. So it's the same concept is needed in terms of CTO or chief architect that is available to multiple small, medium-sized businesses, because they're not going to be able to compete in a digital world or grow without that expertise. So I think that's a great area of growth and opportunity for countries to start looking, countries specifically, to start proposing enabling an SME marketplace for digital transformation, because a lot of those CEOs that I talk to, really, they just don't. I mean, they've got stuff in the cloud, but they really have no idea what they're doing from a technology strategy perspective, because they're just trying to stay in business, especially during COVID.
Right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if I may, I thought I would just share my perspective as well. I think in the government, in Singapore government, we do also have our equivalent of a SME. I will call them SMA, right? Because they are the small, medium agencies, medium-sized agencies. In fact, because they are so small, actually, and they have, if you look at digitalization, the entire scope of digitalization covers right from the infrastructure all the way to corporate application, the very basic corporate application. Just because you're by nature an organization, you have to handle HR, you have to handle finance, you have to handle procurement, and then on top of that, their agency mission capabilities as well. So when we took a look at the whole government and look at all these small and medium-sized agencies, they really do not have the resources or even the capabilities or even the bandwidth or budget to be able to deal with the entire full span or scope for IT digitalization responsibility. So actually, as part of my other portfolio, right, with GovTech, which is really driving applications portfolio remake across the whole of government, is really to look at how we can consolidate and standardize some of the very basic ICT infrastructure, corporate applications for these small and medium-sized agencies, so that we do this as a central team, and then it gets delivered, and all these small and medium-sized agencies will just need to subscribe and use them. So then they don't have to spend their limited time, bandwidth, resource bandwidth, as well as budget bandwidth to have to pay attention to some of these very basic digital needs of the organization. But then they can then now channel their very small team to focus on their agency mission critical areas of work and digitalization efforts. So this is how, from a larger government enterprise architecture perspective, we are seeing how we can transform and help some of our small and medium-sized agencies transform as well and move quickly up the digitalization ladder.
Right. Thank you so much. I think this is also indirectly answering the next question. Is the right way of looking at the cloud adoption? I think Paul mentioned that instead of just looking at the cloud, you look at the architecture first, whether the cloud fit into your overall enterprise strategy and the whole fit into enterprise architecture. The same thing like just now Dr. Kong mentioned about, whether we go for the blockchain, we go for AI, but after the AI is up, the system is up, what is the usage? We don't know, because nobody thought about it. So I think it's very, very important to have the architecture in place. So I think there is next question is from Bunchung, right?
Can I share a bit on this question about the cloud first strategy? I think we need to be realistic, right? I think for Singapore government, we have actually taken the policy of cloud first strategy. In fact, we have announced about 2 years back during Smart Nation platform conference. PM himself made an announcement that say Singapore government will actually adopt cloud as much as possible, right? It's not an easy journey. In fact, a lot of our systems are not built for the cloud. Okay, so although we say cloud first strategy, the immediate thing that we want to do is not just to put our existing applications, which are designed in a very traditional sense, to just go to the cloud, and then we're just making use of the cloud as typically an infrastructure as a service, or at most a platform as a service. But that's not what going to the cloud really means for us. In fact, if we want to adopt a true cloud first strategy, our applications need to be redesigned and rebuilt using cloud architecture, cloud native technologies, so that we can fully take advantage of the kind of agility and innovation that's offered by our various cloud providers out there as well. It's not an easy journey, because that if we want to quickly redevelop all our systems, it amounts to a huge amount of budget, huge amount of resources required to do so. So we took a very practical and pragmatic approach, right? So whatever we can, minimally, if we can lift and shift our systems into the cloud or re-platform our systems to take advantage of the scale, the kind of ability to scale quickly on the cloud, let's do that, right? And then we identify some of the initiatives they are embarking on and take advantage of that, the new development to say, let's try to build it on a cloud native architecture so that the moment you are on cloud, you are ready for cloud as well. And actually, that is not just the technical part. This pragmatic approach is also cognizant to the fact that in terms of the human capital readiness, do we have enough people who understand the cloud to be able to build things on the cloud? So the whole competency development journey takes time, and taking a very measured approach in redeveloping our systems on cloud is actually makes sense because there are not enough people out there with cloud capabilities to be able to guide us in our redevelopment of our systems as well. So I think overall, this is something that perhaps the participants need to think about as well as you think about cloud first strategy.
Right, thank you so much, Bitek. So I think now we want to get the input from Dr. Kwong. I think the question that I have pre-prepared is overlapping with what Boon Chung Pua is asking. Okay, many organizations typically practice some sort of traditional EA. So I believe what he meant by traditional is like the EA using PowerPoint or Word or static, right? Focusing on system and governance. And what are the key difference and benefit of having digital EA capability that models as a digital twin of the organization to enable business and digital transformation? Okay, so I think, yeah, Dr. Kong, I think this is pretty similar with the question that I prepared, like, how many to many interdependency, interrelated among many entities in the enterprise, within the enterprise, as well as to external parties. I think it's almost there. Perhaps Dr. Kong want to share your thought on this.
Okay. I think the question is the traditional EA is a governance and the system role, right? Paul actually made a very good point. Paul actually said that the EA actually is a change agent, right? And he had 3 points. The second point, Paul said the business architecture. I am a true believer that in today's digital transformation, initiative, the business aspect is very important. We can spend a lot of time drawing all the target diagram and all this. The C-level won't be able to understand. And how do we actually, get the buy-in from the C-level, and and also all the management level is very important. And to them, they don't really care about the solution, the technical aspect. What they want to know is how to use the digital solution to support their business, to bring in more revenue, right? Yeah. And there are business leaders ask me this question. So what is digital transformation? Because consultant has been telling them, this is SME, small medium enterprise leaders. They say consultant has been telling them, and those consultants are quite used to those, like what Paul said, the big MNC, big corporation, right? Yeah. So the consultant has been telling the SME leaders that, you need to come up with a new business model. So the question often asked to me is, shall we transform the business? Then we go and do digital transformation. But my answer to them is actually it's a digital business model. If this is a digital business model, the 4 disciplines of EA, business architect, application architecture, information architecture, and the technical architecture. Among these 4 architecture, the business architecture is very, very important. So the role of the EA is like what Paul has been sharing, is a change agent. And the soft skill and all this are become more important. Knowing the business become even more important to engage the C-level. So that has been my view. Yeah. Aaron, yeah.
All right. Sorry. Thank you so much. I think Dr. Kwong is we can see the synergy among the 3 esteemed panelists. So I don't see any clashing. It's like the great mind, the great people, when they gather together, they sing the same choir, okay, without any, out of tune and etc. I think it's perfect. So we have, before I think, maybe let's just, before I think, answer the question from Annie, I think we want to hear from Paul in terms of what do you think so-called tools, okay, what do you think is the key important to manage the complex world? I mean, I think we just want to hear from you of what you have seen out there in the Europe, in the US, because pretty much 95% of your time Mandarin there. We just want to hear from from you, from the other end of the world, what is so-called the trend out there.
Oh, well, so we've been doing a lot of work on figuring out the what we call the red thread, which is effectively how do you decrease documentation, increase facilitation, and increase the velocity of decision making in an organization. Because the difficulty with digital transformation is the speed at which decisions have to be made, and this is why pushing those decisions to as close to the edges, as close to as Mr. B-Tech said, down, bottom up as opposed to top down is essential. And if you think about it, this is how we've built buildings for years. I mean, our building profession is actually a very agile profession, right? You don't go to the city council to ask to build a house. You work with a local architect. You buy, everything is financed at that individual and delivered at that individual level, as long as it, of course, meets building codes and things of that nature. What we've been working a lot with, and I think you've heard this mentioned by the entire panel, are effectively a set of conceptual tools and canvases that link objectives, what we call OKRs, or objective key results, which were popularized by Google, for example, all the way through measurements, and to be able to do so in a very sort of bottom up kind of way. So we're looking for how can architects become better facilitators of the sort of digital agenda of each of the business owners and product owners in the world, while still managing to roll those up into objectives that are meaningful to boards of directors, to executive communities, et cetera. The trend, I would say, pre-COVID was actually pushing architecture into kind of a strange position, meaning there were a lot of people sort of renaming their architect teams engineers and things like that. We dealt with a number of large oil and gas companies that were in the process of that. Now, I think COVID has actually done exactly what the financial crisis did before, which is re-emphasize the importance of architecture and create a balance between what we consider engineering and new technology delivery versus strategic, agile, thinking, where we see things like the development of investment communities within the business planning cycle that work in a horizontal way. When I say horizontal, I mean they start at a value stream, right? So it starts with the customer or the citizen or the student, and that creates a value stream that runs horizontally across capabilities, and that becomes then a handoff process between business and solution architect, such that enterprise architects actually become more mentors or delivering on larger scale sort of multi-value stream initiatives that might or might not include milestones that are critical to the entire organization, such as a cloud adoption or whatnot. Now, that horizontal focus we've found then creates a flow of actually very minimum documentation sets. What IC uses what we call a structured canvas model. And what that means is we've got a set of 90 to 100 or so canvases that all work together, but are in many cases just single page kinds of tools that you can use to facilitate meetings with business stakeholders to work on specific problems, such as customer personas or context views, or what we find the most critical, which is surfacing decisions and their decision characteristics, the speed, the quality, and the information needed to make critical investment decisions, even in the most sort of baseline application kind of delivery components. And this structured canvas approach we found is really taking off. And it's a very powerful model to increase collaboration while decreasing documentation and increasing the quality of decisions being made. So there's those kinds of things. Now, of course, the technical trends are what you hear about mostly, right? AI, cloud, mobility is still obviously a very large concept. The ability to take your information anywhere. Now, this is something I think that's going to be very exciting in 21 and 22, which is the ability to own your own data regardless of where it resides, and that personal data belongs to you, as well as a set of actions and activities. So we're seeing a lot of this in Europe, where people are actually starting, and countries are actually starting to look at effectively not only digital sovereignty, but also individual ownership of data, no matter what servers or machines it resides on, and having control over that. So I think there's some very interesting things happening semantically in ethics and AI and in data protection, but also in the way that we're dealing with these sort of large American companies like Amazon's and Microsoft's, et cetera, which have which we see have kind of has too much power. Nobody wants their country run by Microsoft or Amazon or Google. Like, again, it isn't really about America. It's about these large companies that need to then start to adapt to the needs of countries, but also the needs of citizens, the needs of customers, et cetera. So there's a whole lot of things going on that are putting architects right back in the spotlight.
All right, thank you so much, Paul. I think we almost have the most 5 minutes left. So I think there's a interesting question about certification and standardization. Okay, so I think in regards to that, perhaps Dr. Kwong, is it the right time to mention about we have our own initiative, but I think it has not been made public, I believe. So I think Dr. Kwong, you would like to share about
the one that under Vitek, that one.
And profiling extra. Yeah, Dr. Vitek, if you are still around, you want to introduce, is an opportunity to give a heads up to our audience.
Maybe Vitek is the best person who mentioned that, because he's a chairperson for the initiative. Yeah. But then before we go to that, SCS has already launched the AI ethics and governance, right? And we are going for the certification. And AI ethics and governance is a stackable competency anyway, right? Of course, the AI engineer, all these, they should be aware. But even project manager, even enterprise architects also should practice the AI ethics and governance. Vitek, are you still there to share a little bit about your SPA? Yeah, because there's a question about standardization, competency, and all this. Yeah.
All right. Sorry, Vitek, to catch you off guard.
No, it's okay. I'm always happy to share my just 2 minutes, right? I start with the philosophy, and I think it's very important, because I think if you look at what's happening with the technology space today, when you think about the other regulated space like medicine, architecture, engineering, there's a registration of professionals, right? But in IT, you don't really have to. If you code AI or if you're an enterprise architect, the law doesn't require to be registered, right? I mean, that's not today. But you think about when we grew up, well, when I did application development, right? At most, my software will create interest calculation mistake. The bills that get sent out to the clients are wrong. But today, the software that we write are basically putting into 737 MAX 8. It's in Tesla. It's in future. It's going to be in the robots that cut you up in surgery, right? So all those things that we are doing has got life implication. And I think it is very, very close where we will start thinking about regulations or registration of professionals. I think the law will come in 3 levels of registration, or basically, control. The company itself, that means Boeing itself, will get regulated, right? And then the product itself will get regulated. Boeing 737 MAX 8 will get certified and regulated. There's one more, which is the professional. That means the people like who code AI and whatever, that will get regulated. I think it'll be in EA, it'll be in AI. I think AI specifically will get a very quick look by the regulators, because I think when the code are put into products and it has life implication, that clearly will be it. So the reason why I'm giving you that philosophical background is because that is the foundation of what we're thinking, what SES will be in the next 5 to 10 years. When the laws are coming to hit us with regulations, I think we want SES to be ready to be that organization to take on the task of the certification. So that's the foundation. What we're trying to do today is baby steps. We're trying to get certification. We're trying to get basically looking at all the micro certification that's happening out there, and then allowing SES members to start collecting those, and collecting those information, it will contribute to your own professional journey of the way you manage the pathway for you to become a professional of your choice, either in AI, in EA, in project management, or blockchain, or whatever it may be, or in the technology space. Some of these will go faster than others. Like I said, AI will go faster than the others, and so on and so forth. So that's the foundation, and that's what SVPA is trying to do, and I chair that. So that's the story I'm telling at that level, at 30,000 feet. Right.
Okay, so now I come back to the 500, okay, 500 feet, and then from ground level, right? Yeah. So there are few professional group that in the pilot. EA is one of the group that in the pilot, right? Yeah. So what we hope to do is to first standardize the competency. So if somebody claim that they are EA, they must be the EA, right? So that is what we hope to do. And also set a benchmark. I think somebody mentioned in the chat, say that sometimes certification, encourage group thinking. No, I think we need to have a benchmark, right? But most importantly, is also one of the suggestion in the chat group. Can we standardize some of the title, right? Yeah, like for instance, solution architect. What is a solution architect? Yeah. So I think some of these things that through this initiative chaired by Vivek, we are going to set a standard. We are trying to standardize some of this terminology, right? And most importantly is like what Aaron and his chapter has been doing. Try to move the status of the EA in the board level, right? Aaron, that has been your thinking, right? Yeah, so it is not a technical competency, right? Paul also shared that, it's a change agent, right? So it must be at the board level, right? Yeah, so that has been the initiative that in the pipeline SES is going to embark. Yeah.
I would love to mention, first of all, I commend everybody on that. There was the question earlier, would standardization and licensure and regulation actually stifle innovation? And historically, that actually has not been the case. Actually, the more capable and standardized the professional body, the more capable innovation occurs. But also, we also have to balance innovation with risk, right? So that, historically, we've been able to roll out technologies in our organizations that are unfinished because they were primarily enablement technologies, meaning it was sort of like it was going to impact our sales staff and their ability to handle call volume and things like that. And that obviously doesn't have the same level of risk of surgical equipment, self-driving or cars or trams or airplanes or other kinds of things that have literally direct physical safety issues. But the other side of that is standardization of competencies actually needs to happen in coordination with a lot of global organizations, because, and I have believed 100% that we are going to see licensure or regulation related to the competencies of architects. That's why ISA built our competency model in 2007 and update it annually to be able to structure this. Now, we're not going to see the exact same competencies from, in every location, but we do need to know that an architect is an architect is an architect, and that they are capable of working on systems or complex executive level or systems of people, process, and technology that could, and we need to know that they're capable of doing that. Just like you would never take a loved one to, a doctor that wasn't licensed. I don't know why you would take you would build a surgical device with an architect that wasn't licensed. It sort of doesn't make sense. So, and I'm really impressed to see the growth at SCS in Singapore in this. I think they're really leading the way. In some ways, some of the kind of programmer, garage programmer mentality is still infecting some of our thinking, even after the last 50 years. But I think that is going away, and it's very essential. And ISA hopes to play a very big part in at least the architect side of that, ensuring that competency models and certifications, especially experiential certifications, have equivalency across different regions and different countries.
Right. Okay. All right. I think we have come to an end of our first panel session. I think it's very interesting. I believe if we continue, we can end on Sunday, right? Because the topic is so broad, and then if you ask everybody question, they will answer, and you can see the passion has been poured into this discussion. But we have still got quite a number of interesting 4-5 more sessions to go. So I think we have to end here. And of course, we'd like to thank you each of panelists here.